the police chief a crook?
Yes.
Was the mayor a drug dealer?
Yes.
Where does the corruption stop?
Isn't it safe to say the village of Allerton, when you were mayor, was one of the most corrupt small towns in America?
The mayor, the police chief, they made the rules. The goal was to shed light upon the corruption and to eliminate the corruption.
In federal court records, he was identified as Officer Number 1, the informant who was wired for the feds and helped them catch public officials in the act of committing crimes. It all happened in the small village of Allerton, Illinois, a community with a long history of corruption. Tonight, News 4 Investigates tells a story rarely seen. You'll see the evidence and hear from the undercover informant who helped bring down what some prosecutors believe was one of the most corrupt governments in America.
We met right here. It was dark that night.
Anthony LaFleur was the undercover informant who brought down the criminals running the village of Allerton.
No comment.
Mayor Randy McCallum. Was the mayor a drug dealer?
Yes.
Police Chief Michael Baxton. Was the police chief a crook?
Yes.
And Street Superintendent Ronnie Cummings.
He said he was going to wrap up a gun to shoot and kill someone.
All three of them owe their prison time to the moments they spent caught on tape with LaFleur.
He was the key. He was the critical witness that we needed. He was the insider who was willing to work for the good of all of us.
Allerton is on the southeast side of East St. Louis, the poorest and most violent city in America. With a population of just 2,000 residents, hardly any tax base, and a long history of corruption, Allerton is always ripe for abuse, especially by the people who control it. But in recent years, the corruption in Allerton had become deeper and wider than ever, and it would take a unique effort to end it.
Being honest in a corrupt department is difficult. Just like being an outsider.
LaFleur began secretly gathering information for federal agents in October 2009, not long after he says McCallum made LaFleur give him his first paycheck in exchange for LaFleur getting hired as an Allerton cop. LaFleur had been a troubled kid from Allerton. He had been close to McCallum, so he had street cred, especially with the mayor.
I had his total trust.
Why do you think the mayor trusted you?
I was down and out, needed some money. He thought he could persuade me to commit illegal activities.
The first target of the investigation was Mayor McCallum.
When you get ready, let's go.
In a series of meetings in the summer of 2011, McCallum told LaFleur to steal drugs and cash from suspects, and they would share the profits. LaFleur says McCallum used some of the officers to target competing drug dealers so the mayor could eventually gain total control of the local drug market.
He was the dictator. What he say goes. You know, he was John Gotti.
The mayor?
Yes.
The mayor saw himself as a mafia boss of this community.
Correct.
McCallum proved it while he was under surveillance. With LaFleur as the informant, federal investigators caught the mayor accepting cash and what the mayor believed to be crack cocaine. But McCallum wanted a bigger score, insisting in a series of secretly taped conversations that he wanted to hit the mother lode.
Damn right.
And make LaFleur famous.
Well, see, you're going to get that mother lode. That's my you stay top of the line. I'm going to make this famous out here. You'll never say nothing to nobody. This is our thing, man. Nobody. Nobody.
LaFleur was nervous, but he says federal agents walked him through every step, including attaching and repeatedly testing the recording devices until he felt comfortable doing it without them.
I was a little nervous, but they walked me through it. And after that, I was like Mark McGwire hitting the home run after that, you know.
Not that tough.
It was just, you know, go along with the flow.
A few months after getting McCallum, LaFleur put the hidden video camera on again, this time in the bathroom of the Flying J truck stop, just 2 miles from the Allerton Police Department. After putting on the gear, LaFleur walked past the coffee pots and soda machines, got in his marked Allerton police car,
sitcom Allerton 2013.
Called the police dispatcher and reported an abandoned vehicle.
2013, go ahead.
I was just flagged down by a pedestrian. They advised that there is going to be an abandoned vehicle over on Lakewood. I'm going to check it out.
2013, 10-4.
A few minutes later, he reports the license plate to the dispatcher.
It's going to be out of Illinois.
Police Chief Michael Baxton arrives quickly, and as proof that LaFleur is no longer nervous, he laughs and cracks jokes with the target of the investigation.
Crazy, man.
Baxton falls for the bait. He calls the Columbia Police Department, which identifies the car as stolen, which means it's evidence in a criminal case.
I think that's the key on the seat over there.
Baxton tells LaFleur to get gloves.
Hey, get your gloves on and open the trunk.
Okay.
Before LaFleur and Baxton arrived at the car, the FBI put 5 Xbox 360 video game consoles in the trunk. The total value of the gaming systems was around $1,500. They were put there to see if Baxton would steal them, and the police chief took the bait.
All right, Joe. Thank you. Hold on, wait till that car pass. Okay, go ahead. You live at? Okay. Right at home. All right. You open your Hey, oh my.
What were you thinking when all this is going on?
My honest opinion,
Yeah.
I got him.
Weeks after committing that crime, Baxton was hired as the police chief of East St. Louis, where he was chief years earlier until being forced out of his job. LaFleur told me Baxton bragged about how easy it was to steal cash and drugs in East St. Louis.
He promised me that he was going to hire me as an East St. Louis police officer, and we'll be a millionaire within a year.
But LaFleur stayed in Allerton and continued collecting evidence for federal agents. Street Superintendent Ronnie Cummings was the next target. Cummings was prohibited from owning a gun because he was a convicted felon. On January 4, 2012, 3 months after nabbing Chief Baxton, LaFleur came to Cummings' home and recorded him asking for an extended clip of bullets for his semi-automatic gun.
Can I get an extended clip on a gun like that? Probably. Yes. Let's see. I pay for that.
Oh, my gun, hold on, I can't.
Then LaFleur recorded Cummings saying he would wrap a bag around the gun so it would catch the shell casings, eliminating evidence that police could trace back to him.
Man, the pistol in the bag. I'm gonna have where the shell casings falling in the bag.
It's unclear what, if any, crime Cummings planned to commit.
How bad was it?
It was about as bad as you could get. I mean, if you take a city and you look at every level, from the mayor's office to the police chiefs to the street superintendents, I mean, where does the corruption stop?
U.S. Attorney Steve Wigington says the evidence collected by LaFleur was critical in the corruption cases against the crooks that had turned the village government into a criminal enterprise.
He's a hero in my book. He agreed to voluntarily put himself in harm's way.
Today, Anthony LaFleur is back in Allerton, patrolling the streets he helped clean up, driving the same car once used by the crooked mayor he helped put behind bars.
So why are you coming forward?
Well, I'm coming forward because I believe that if I could come forward and share my story, then hopefully it would inspire others, officers and people in the community to come forward.
And cooperate with police?
Yes.
And put the crooks in prison?
Correct.
How did Anthony LaFleur gain the complete confidence of corrupt public officials? In part, it was because LaFleur was raised by criminals.
All of my loved ones is in prison. You know, it's just me, so to speak.
Up next, News 4 investigates the remarkable life story of the informant. The crooks who ran the village of Allerton trusted Anthony LaFleur. They trusted him to help them break the law, and they believed that he would keep their secrets. Of course, the obvious question is why. Why would they trust LaFleur? And why would he risk his life to put them behind bars? If you want to understand why Anthony LaFleur risked his life as an FBI informant, you need to come here. At the grave of his grandmother, he finds inspiration.
Even though we didn't have much, struggled. You know, she gave me her last, protected me.
LaFleur's mother is buried just 30 yards away.
Where is your mother buried?
She's buried somewhere over here.
But he doesn't visit his mother's grave. That's where he finds pain and disappointment.
Why won't you walk over there?
Ain't nothing over there with me.
Anthony says his mother was a drug addict who abused him.
When I was about 7 years of age, my biological mother attempted to shoot me up with heroin.
She died in prison.
I forgave her for the things that she did. She had a drug problem, so, you know, it doesn't justify it, but, you know, I understand. Same thing with my biological father.
LaFleur's father, Anthony Sr., has a long, violent criminal record that goes back more than 30 years and includes a conviction for second-degree murder. Anthony says his father was also abusive.
He drove his vehicle through the house and, you know, grabbed me by my ankle one time, and my grandmother had to put her body over me to keep him from smashing me into the concrete.
His father and 2 uncles are behind bars.
You know, all of my loved ones is in prison. You know, it's just me, so to speak.
And LaFleur nearly followed them to prison.
When I was 17, I got charged for criminal damage to property.
It was a felony charge. He asked the prosecutor and judge to let him plead to a misdemeanor.
And I asked both of them to show some leniency and to help me. I told them what I wanted to be. I told them about my past, and I told them, you know, if they gave me a felony, you know, they would end any dreams and hopes I have.
A felony conviction would have killed his dream of becoming a cop. The judge accepted LaFleur's plea to a misdemeanor. Anthony's rough childhood and the criminal history of his family gave him street cred in Allerton, and that made him the perfect informant.
Will be the corner house on the left.
As the key undercover operative in the Allerton criminal investigation,
We met right here. It was dark that night.
LaFleur had to earn the trust of the crooks who ran the village,
No comment.
including the drug-dealing former mayor, Randy McCallum.
What type of things did the mayor talk about?
How he would shoot people, how he wanted me to rob individuals, drug dealers.
LaFleur eventually got the mayor on an undercover camera, and secret recordings helped send McCallum, Police Chief Michael Baxton Sr., and Street Superintendent Ronnie Cummings to prison.
I had a goal, and the goal was to shed light upon the corruption.
His mission was easier because he had already earned the trust of the McCallum family. 4 years before he secretly recorded Mayor McCallum for the FBI, McCallum got Anthony a summer job at the East St. Louis School District. They were so close, LaFleur used the McCallum's home address as his personal mailing address.
I helped him out. I mean, what friends do, that's what I did. I helped him out.
Former Mayor McCallum talked with us after his recent release from federal prison.
I mean, I've known Mr. LaFleur since he was 10 years old. They lived 2 houses down from my mom for 13, 14 years. I knew his whole family.
McCallum caught up with LaFleur in the fall of 2009. The village hired Anthony as an uncertified part-time auxiliary police officer, but LaFleur says the job came with strings attached.
Mayor McCallum told you that he would hire you as a cop,
Yes,
but that the condition of him hiring you is that you literally handed him your first paycheck.
after I cashed it, yes.
So that was going to be essentially the bribe to get your job
Correct,
as a cop.
correct. And I believe that was an integrity check for him to see if he could trust me or not. And then the other stipulations were any money, dope that was taken off the street, had to bring it to him to split it.
LaFleur quickly realized that his old friend the mayor was a crook, so he called the FBI and began to collect evidence. As the anonymous Officer Number 1 listed in court records, he provided tips to the feds for the next year and a half. Then, in the spring of 2011, the FBI began to view him as a possible key undercover informant, someone who could help shut down McCallum's criminal enterprise. During one of his first in-depth interviews with the FBI, Anthony told the agents that the mayor trusted him because McCallum knew his uncle and that the mayor owed his uncle money for some tire rims. That uncle is now in federal prison.
He was troubled. He come from a troubled family. But far as more, he was a good kid, I thought.
Yeah, he's a rat.
Through McCallum's wife, Gwen, we obtained a box of documents that are not part of the public record, including the mostly unedited FBI field reports that describe in detail the information delivered to the feds by their informant, Anthony LaFleur. The ex-mayor's attorney got the records as part of the discovery used to defend Randy McCallum.
He lied about a lot of things.
In the FBI field reports, LaFleur does make claims that were never proven, at least in open court, including that McCallum kept drugs and a safe under his home.
They raided the house. No underground safe. I kept the drugs in the house, and no drugs were found in my house.
LaFleur and the U.S. attorney declined to comment on those claims. LaFleur says his primary role was to give the feds as much information as possible, not determine if all of it was true. The FBI field reports show that LaFleur supported some of his claims with police reports and other government records, passing along his findings at undisclosed locations in cities throughout the Metro East. For months, LaFleur recorded his meetings with Allerton's crooked leaders, finally snagging the mayor when LaFleur gave McCallum what was presented as crack cocaine.
I'll say the biggest thing I ever did wrong in my life was participating in that.
You thought it was crack. It was presented as crack.
It was presented as crack, but being in the neighborhood that I'm from, Craig, I knew it wasn't crack.
Well, according to the government documents, you didn't know it was crack until after you took it and then allegedly sampled it or had somebody sample it, and then you came back to him and said, this isn't the real stuff. But you didn't know it when you took it, according to the government wiretaps.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to...
Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I'm not going to dispute with what the government says, but I just say it like this. Whatever I did was wrong, and I participated in it, and it was wrong. Listen, we all make mistakes, man.
1 minute confessing, the next in denial, the former mayor still seems to be trying to rewrite the history of his criminal administration.
I planned on retiring as probably the greatest mayor that ever lived in this village. God has a way of taking something broken and turning it into a masterpiece.
But at the end of our interview, Randy McCallum admitted that Anthony LaFleur did the right thing when he decided to turn against him and become the informant.
He did what he had to do. I did myself, Craig. I don't blame him for anything. It was me.
U.S. Attorney Steve Wigington heads the office that prosecuted the Allerton corruption cases.
I would hope any employer would look at Anthony LaFleur and say, that's exactly the kind of person I want to hire. That's exactly the kind of person I want watching my business.
Instead, LaFleur has received threats, both in person
Just flipped out the bird.
and on social media, like this post on Facebook that refers to him by his nickname, Bright Eyes.
Has your life ever been threatened
Yes.
because you were an informant?
Yes.
If they harm one of our former witnesses, the consequences would be severe, and they would be quick.
I remember one police officer telling me that I would never amount to anything, and I used his negativity for motivation.
There was so much negativity, so much fuel for proving he could do good. In the cemetery, where he finds the hurt and hope that battled for control of his life, Anthony LaFleur returns to his grandmother's grave, the woman who is determined to love him and is his true inspiration.
My primary goal is to make her proud of me.
There are many surprising chapters to Anthony LaFleur's story, but we were shocked to learn that despite his heroic actions as the informant, Anthony may never be a cop again. That part of our story is next, as News 4 investigates the informant. Anthony LaFleur risked his life to help federal agents and prosecutors put crooked officials in prison. But LaFleur's law enforcement career is in jeopardy. LaFleur was hired as an auxiliary officer, but he never got his certification, which is required to be a police officer in the state of Illinois. Since then, he says he was injured at work and is now trying to recuperate so he can return. At the same time, he needs to graduate from the State Police Academy, something that seems impossible until he recovers from his injuries. He has a deadline and a huge challenge ahead of him if he wants to continue his dream of working in law enforcement. But it's far from the biggest challenge he's overcome. And the new Allerton police chief says the village will sponsor Anthony and do what it can to help him be a certified police officer. As part of our investigation, we've created a page on our website, KMOV.com, that introduces you to the main people in our story. It also provides key court records in the criminal cases and explains in detail how a federal agent created the fake crack cocaine that helped put the mayor behind bars. You will also find links to other News 4 Investigates documentaries. By going public, Anthony LaFleur gave us a unique opportunity to get unprecedented access to the undercover investigation of government officials. It's one thing to watch this kind of a story from somewhere else unfold on a movie screen, but this was real life in our own backyard. As a teenager, Anthony seemed destined to follow in the footsteps of some of the criminals in his family. Instead, his life took a dramatic turn, and he made a huge difference in a community that desperately needed help. It happened because one man made a courageous choice and decided to become the informant.